My name is Frances Hui with CFHK Foundation. We recently published a report on political prisoners and prison conditions in Hong Kong.
Last week, we spoke with Frances Hui, Policy and Advocacy Coordinator at the Committee for Freedom in Hong Kong Foundation, about the Foundation's investigative report, We Were Made to Suffer, Systemic Abuse and Political Control Inside Hong Kong's Prisons.
In this report, we documented the systemic abuse and political control inside prisons. Particularly, we documented a lot of the abuses that affect pretty much the general prison population in Hong Kong, but more particularly the political prisoners, how they're being caught in the system, how the Hong Kong prison is being used as a political tool to control them and suppress their dissent.
The report documents how Hong Kong's prisons have become instruments of political repression, where detainees, including nearly 800 people still behind bars for their pro-democracy activism, are subjected to psychological manipulation, solitary confinement, and medical neglect. You're listening to The Divide. My name is Iris Xu. In this week's episode, we continue our look inside Hong Kong's tightening system of control and from beyond the prison walls. Now, in the report, one of the key findings is that prisoners are often forced to participate in Project Path, a compulsory political indoctrination program. The report says, under direction from the Beijing Control Committee for Safeguarding National Security, CDS, compels inmates to attend pro-CCP classes, watch propaganda films, and sit through confessional counseling sessions. Authority claims 99% of protester prisoners voluntarily participated, but refusing to participate in the project can mean loss of privileges or solitary confinement. And here's Frances explaining what kind of threats or retaliation inmates face when they say no to these projects.
So it's not a very official or proper way of threat, but there are many ways that the prison guards can retaliate if you're not cooperating. It doesn't just apply to the courses or the political indoctrination program. Like anything, any commands coming from the guards, if you're not listening to them or if you're not willing to compromise or cooperate, they have many different ways to retaliate. And that happens too when someone wants to file a complaint. It's everything. It's crossing path here is that they can beat you. They can drag you to a camera-free zone and beat you. Obviously, without surveillance and control, they could have one of your inmates do the job to abuse you. They can put you in solitary confinement with obviously proper way to do that because it's shielded by the prison rules. Like I said, the non-punitive solitary confinement. They can take away some of the privileges you used to have. For example, like if you're eating your lunches, we have heard that some of the political prisoners, they were told to have to stay in one place and they cannot have any social interactions with other inmates as a result. So that's one thing that happened to our interviewee, that they were not able to eat with other inmates. And I mean, there's just so many other ways to do that. For example, during their workshop, like, you need to work in prison, they could put you in a much more difficult position that is more labor heavy, again, as a way to retaliate, but it doesn't require any proper or official procedure to do that. Because you don't have any control, you don't have any power when you are in prison. You have to listen to everything that the guards say, and if you do not cooperate, then they have every control of every ways to control you and beat you down. And I think that happens to a lot of political prisoners, or I guess in general prisoners, when they first go in. Obviously they're still getting used to the atmosphere and the rules. Some people would stand up for themselves. Like we have our interviewees stood up for himself when one of the senior officers come visit, and he reported, some of the wrongdoings of the officers. But obviously what comes back to him is retaliation, and they want you to compel, they want you to compromise, they want you to bend down. So I think inside prison, I heard this a lot, inside prison, if you want to survive, just behave well. 你要乖.
Now let's talk about the recommendations listed in this report. One of them that caught my attention was to the legislatures. It says the legislators should dedicate more significant resources to human rights focused legislative bodies, adopt a prisoner programs, and mandate public reporting on solitary medical denials and visitation restrictions. I want to ask, is the Hong Kong legislature doing anything at the moment? And do you think they have the will to even consider these recommendations at the moment?
Our recommendations didn't really cover the Hong Kong government. A lot of them are for the international community and democratic countries. So for democratic legislatures, we're referring to legislatures in democratic countries like the U.S. Congress, and obviously Taiwan is one of them, and the UK Parliament, and all sort of, legislatures from all around the world to put pressure on the Hong Kong government to, disclose this information. Particularly, we talked about the Adopt a Prisoner programs. This exists, from my understanding, the U.S. Congress has one of those programs where members of Congress can adopt a prisoners to advocate for them. And it really helps. Right now, I think only Jimmy Lai, it's on the program. It's being adopted by one of the members of Congress as a political prisoner. And he's the only Hong Kong political prisoners that have been adopted. And it allows the member of Congress to really focus on this individual case and advocate for that person particularly. And it gives them the power to request briefings with the administration, the U.S. administration, and different programs across the governments that could help advocate for that prisoner's conditions, or behind bars, or to advocate for the release of that prisoner. It gives them a tremendous power to really shine a light on the prisoner that they have been adopted. So we have always welcomed and encouraged members of Congress to adopt more Hong Kong political prisoners. I mean, there are so many of them that would be worth raising attention to. For example, Joshua Wong, Gwyneth Ho, all those people have a public profile, and it's easy to talk about their story. I mean, there's one thing that everyone can do, I think, particularly officials from democratic countries, but also the UN bodies are able to do, is to request for an independent prison visit in Hong Kong prisons. It's been quite a while that Hong Kong officials have allowed this to happen, but we need UN officials to be able to get in there and to document what's going on. It is a way to show transparency and accountability. The Chinese government have allowed this to happen in the past with the Uyghur concentration camps. Obviously, a lot of them were set up beforehand. Having human rights observers, independent, individuals, like independent bodies that can investigate on some of the abuses that we have talked about. I mean, if the Hong Kong prisons are operating so well and in line with the international standard, why don't you just open for outside observer to come in and take a look, right? So that's one thing that not everyone, but pretty much officials from international communities can push for, can request for to the Hong Kong authorities.
By advocating for political prisoners in Hong Kong, Frances herself is wanted by the Hong Kong government under the national security law for allegedly colluding with foreign forces, and they placed a bounty of $1 million on her head. And in April, her parents, who remained in Hong Kong were taken in for questioning by police. I asked her how she's coping with this.
Well, I won't say I'm doing extremely well. I'm not. I mean, everyone facing with these sort of threats and retaliation would be affected tremendously, and there's a lot of stress that goes behind it, especially when it affects people that you care about. I think that's one thing that really holds a lot of us back. Obviously we are responsible for our own action, but our parents or our family should not be, because we're all adults. But that's one of the tactics that CCP has been using. I think that applies to the Uyghur population, the Uyghur communities as well. Some of the Uyghurs who have left China and dispersed to parts around the world, they were also threatened because with their family or relatives back home in Xinjiang, because they were put in concentration camps. And what can you do? It's a big decision to make, whether you will continue to speak up, whether you will continue your activism, to expose the wrongdoing, or you're just gonna stay quiet and protect your family. I mean, this is something all of us have to go through. And yeah, I mean, it's a lot of stress and pressure, but I think that's their tactic. That's what they were trying to do, is to silence everyone by doing so. So I'm still alive. I mean, I still have a long future ahead of me. So I won't back down, and this report coming out right now is one of the testaments. And I think it's also, one of my responsibilities. After being able to leave Hong Kong, I left behind a lot of friends that I've met throughout all these years, and a lot of them are now behind bars, and I'm only relying on, the news, or sometimes words of mouth from our friends to know how they're doing behind bars. But those people used to have a bright future ahead of them. They used to be standing on the front line and be the loudest advocates for the cause. And now, they are being locked in jail. That's a huge consequences to pay. And I think now it's my responsibility to pay, it's my responsibility to make sure that to ensure their well-being, and to ensure that these treatments that they experience behind bars are being exposed to the public, because the public deserve to know the truth. The public deserve to know what they are going through behind the bars. That's one of the things, one of the biggest principle of me, I guess also from my journalism experience, my background as a journalist, that I think no matter how hard it is, we have to expose the truth. We have to tell the public what's going on. And the Hong Kong government needs to be held accountable in every way for these systemic abuses happening to the prisoners, and also happening to us, right? Like people, advocates abroad, that continue to raise a voice. All of these are repression by the CCP to try to control the narrative and try to control dissent, so they could control the narrative, I guess, to keep their international image as a global financial center. But, we raise the question, why would global financial hub have 1,900 political prisoners? There's not a single international financial center would have political prisoners. And if they want to keep that image, they need to respond to the scrutiny from the global communities, and really think about that, and think about releasing them to keep their image. That's one of the messages that we're trying to get through.
As Frances tells her story, it became clear that the consequences of Hong Kong's national security regime extend far beyond prison walls, and the fear and control she describes do not end with a sentence. They follow family, friends, and communities across borders. Yet amid the pressure and personal risk, she continues to speak out, determined to give voice to those who can no longer speak for themselves.
My last message would be for the world to not to forget about the Hong Kong movement, what happened back in 2019 onwards, and what happened to these people who now lose a voice and now are being put behind bars for simply standing up for freedom and to protect Hong Kong. Again, this is one thing that the Hong Kong government is trying to control. They try to make these people think that they're being forgotten, they're being abandoned, and so in any way you can, write letters, raise their profile in your own way, and to talk about their stories. I mean, there are so many ways that you can support them and show them that the world hasn't forgot them. Use different ways, creatively to support in your own platforms would really help them to keep their morale high and to keep their spirits high. So that's what I would tell the world to wrap this up. I will continue to stand with my friends. That's all.
Thank you for listening. This episode of The Divide is produced by Radio Taiwan International.
Sometimes I can hear my bones straining under the weight of all the lives I'm not living. My eyes can take in all the change. People got it all arranged. Am I living? Am I dreaming? Some nights I will scream alone in my little lovely cozy private zone. Now here I am, I'm standing here, waiting days and months or years, waiting for the shadow fades. But sometimes I wonder why. Did we exist or alive? Alive. We're gonna tear it apart. We're gonna make this place worth living, worth relying next time. Men are gonna destroy each other as soon as it becomes easy enough to take part in the war. All is fair in love and war. Some nights I will scream alone in my little lovely cozy private zone. Now here I am, I'm standing here, waiting days and months or years, waiting for the shadow fades. But sometimes I wonder why. Did we exist or alive? Alive. We're gonna tear it apart. We're gonna make this place worth living, worth relying next time. Men are gonna destroy each other as soon as it becomes easy enough to take part in the war. All is fair in love and war. Hard times had enough, but they only helped me through. They helped me through. Hard times had enough, and those who look down on me, it doesn't really matter, 'cause now I am learning somehow how to lock out the dark, out the lost and the found. Now I dare to shout, I live my life. It's not your business at all, at all, at all, at all. We're gonna tear it apart. We're gonna make this place worth living, worth relying next time. Men are gonna destroy each other as soon as it becomes easy enough to take part.